Buddhāvataṃsaka Sutra. Book 39. Entry into the Realm of Reality. Video 27. At that time the end of the eon was approaching in that world. The 5 corruptions were in evidence. People had stopped acting virtuously and had taken to bad ways. Most of them were headed for misery. Because of their wrongdoings their lives were short. They had scanty means of subsistence. They were ugly. They experienced little pleasure and much pain. They were in the habit of argument and dissent. They were given to foul and incoherent speech. They were overcome by acquisitiveness. They were corrupt in mind and thought. They were lost in the jungle of various views. As they were obsessed with unreasonable desires and dominated by unwholesome acquisitiveness, the rain that would cause the crops to grow did not fall in the proper season. For that reason, furthermore, with all the vegetation withered, the people suffered from various diseases and scattered to the 8 directions, without resort. They all went to the capital city light of myriad arrays of jewel trees, surrounded it, and with various gestures of supplication raised a great outcry to the king. We are oppressed, abandoned, tormented by hunger and thirst, dismayed and distressed, without any savior, without refuge or resort, in a cage of suffering. Our livelihood is threatened, and we are on the brink of death. The people in the city who were suffering from hunger and thirst, who were naked and homeless, who were in misery, despondent, and depressed, also were sick and tired of suffering. They betook themselves to the king as a man of great knowledge and a protector, thinking they had found a source of comfort, happiness, and livelihood, a guide to the way out, a great ship, an island of jewels of knowledge, a great benefit, thinking they had found all the delights of heaven. The king, hearing their outcry, was filled with countless tens of hundreds of thousands of facets of great compassion. Meditating on the principle of great compassion, in a moment he became single-minded and uttered 10 statements of great compassion. Alas! These people, without support, have fallen into the great pitfall of the mundane world. How can I be refuge for them, leading them to the state of repose of the enlightened? Alas! These people have no savior and are oppressed by all kinds of afflictions. How can I become their savior, leading them to impeccable behavior? Alas! These people have no refuge in the world and are terrorized by old age and death. How can I become a refuge for them, removing all their fears of life and death? Alas! These people have no resort and are oppressed by various kinds of worldly distress. How can I become a resort for them, leading them to ultimate safety on the path of omniscience? Alas! Everyone is in the darkness of ignorance, shrouded in the darkness of uncertainty and doubt. How can I become a light, dispelling the darkness of ignorance for them? Alas! These people are without illumination. How can I spread the light of great knowledge, showing them all the way into unobscured knowledge? Alas! The world of these people lacks the light of knowledge, and their minds are polluted by envy, jealousy, guile, and deceit. How can I produce the light of supreme knowledge, leading them all to cultivate purity? Alas! The world is without a guide and has plunged into a dangerous current in the ocean of the mundane world. How can I become a guide, to show them what to do? Alas! Everyone lacks a teacher. All are misguided. How can I become a teacher for everyone, with the proper timing commanded by a Buddha to guide people to complete maturity in all qualities? Alas, everyone lacks a leader, all are as though blind. How can I become a leader, to lead everyone on the way to unobstructed omniscience? Having made these expressions of compassion, the king announced that he would undertake a great sacrifice, that he would satisfy everyone, giving them whatever they needed. With that, the storehouses in every city and town on the continent were opened and all kinds of goods were placed on the streets. All the necessities of life were set out, all treasuries were opened, all stores of valuables were displayed. And the king projected a likeness of himself to every house to fulfill their wishes. Having arranged this act of giving things away, he had a great place of sacrifice prepared east of the city, in front of the city gate called Jewel Mountain Light. That place was equal in length and width, covering a most extensive area. It was level and clean, without potholes, clear of brambles, dust, and gravel. It was made of all precious elements, and the surface was spread with jewels. It was adorned with many arrays of jewels and strewn with flowers of various jewels. There was an abundance of all the finest aromatic powders, and it was perfumed with all kinds of scents. There were lamps giving off jewel lights, and the sky was covered with radiant clouds of incense. The place was adorned with orderly rows of trees of all kinds of jewels as well as various mansions, palaces, and towers. Overhead were parasols, banners, and pennants, flashing with trailing strings of various jewels. It was covered with nets of various jewel flowers, encircled with parasols made of webs of fragrant jewels. Jewel bells on nets of gold rang. It was shaded by canopies shining with various jewels, spread with aromatic powders of all the finest fragrances, and beautifully strewn with flowers made of all kinds of jewels, while pleasant music sounded from innumerable instruments. It was purified with arrays of various ornaments of all kinds of jewels, produced as a result of the deeds of enlightening beings. In the middle was a great lion throne, standing on a surface made of a variegated collection of 10 kinds of jewels, surrounded by shining railings made of 10 kinds of jewels, beautified with trees of 10 kinds of jewels arrayed evenly between the railings, its feet firmly set on unbreakable diamond. The throne was set with jewel figurines and was adorned with hundreds of jewel protuberances. It was embellished with variegated arrays of jewels, jewel banners and streamers were raised all around it, and it was covered with nets of jewel bells, nets of celestial jewels, and nets of jewel flowers. It gave off clouds of fragrance and was arrayed with many colored cloths of pleasant texture, finer than those of the heavens. Sweet music and song were heard all around. There were stairs of various jewels, arrayed with banners and railings, and shining jewel statues depicting various spiritual transfigurations. Here the king sat, handsome, serene, endowed with the pure marks of a great man, strong, robust, good, kind, and virtuous in all ways, endowed with all the best qualities, born of a line of great rulers, in command of all goods, pure in control of the law, master of his own mind, eloquent, endowed with unshakable knowledge, correctly applying well-constructed laws, showing endless virtues. Furthermore, as the king sat there, in the sky above him there appeared a great parasol, on a long, brilliant jewel pole, its 100,000 ribs made of all kinds of jewels, brilliantly adorned with blazing lights, covered with lustrous gold, arrayed with nets of jewels, hung with bells of gold and jewels on strings of jewels, adorned with garlands of jewels twirling all around, producing sweet heavenly sounds, the ringing of the bells urging all beings to act virtuously. The king, moreover, fanned with jewel-wisp fans, shone with a splendor surpassing that of the King of Gods. As soon as the king sat on this throne, all the people stood before him with their palms joined and paid their respects. Then, seeing the assembly of countless petitioners, with various needs and desires, from various places, speaking various languages, all looking up to the king as the pole of prosperity, each thinking of him as a man of great knowledge, looking up to him as a great man of goodness and charity, considering him to have undertaken the vows of enlightening beings, the king felt as if he were seeing good friends and was flooded with immense compassion. There arose in him the dauntless energy to satisfy all petitioners forever and the all-pervasive will to give to everyone impartially. Furthermore, when the king saw all those petitioners, he became happier than if he had acquired rule over the galaxy for boundless eons, more than if he had acquired the throne of lordship over the gods for countless eons. His joy upon seeing those petitioners was as that of someone in the wilderness, long separated from family and friends, upon being united with them. His mind was filled with happiness, he was uplifted with joy and flooded with delight. The power of his faith in the enlightenment of Buddhas increased, his budding faith in omniscience grew, the power of his purity of determination for all the qualities of Buddhahood swelled, his faculties as an enlightening being became fit for use, he was flooded with a feeling of contentment and well-being, and by the force of great joy his senses and will as a benefactor become flexible. Why? Because the king, who was intent on omniscience, had betaken himself to the nature of omniscience, stood before the door to the path of omniscience, had engaged his attention on the satisfaction of all living beings, was on the verge of entry into the ocean of all enlightened virtues, was intent on shattering the mountains of obstructions caused by demons, actions, and afflictions, was absorbed in properly taking up the instructions of all Buddhas, was endeavoring to embody all roots of goodness, was free from all attachments, was unattached to any objects in the world, and realized that all things are in essence like space, thought of all those petitioners as like an only son, as like his parents, as worthy of gifts, as spiritual benefactors, as precious, as doers of what is difficult, as useful in many ways, as supreme benefactors, as supporting the path of enlightenment, as guides and teachers. The king then fulfilled the needs and wishes of all the petitioners with unmitigated kindness, without turning his back on anyone, giving impartially to everyone, according to their needs. He gave away whatever he had to whoever required it, impartial toward all living beings. At that time, in that gathering at the sacrificial ground, there was a grandee's daughter, named Jewel Light, with a retinue of 60 girls. She was beautiful, with a clear, healthy complexion, dark hair and eyes, a pleasant scent, and a clear voice. She was well dressed and wore fine ornaments. She was alert and intelligent, modest, stable, and well behaved. She was respectful to the worthy, most circumspect and clear-headed in conduct, profound in action, endowed with wisdom. She had already accomplished basic skills involved in grasping, practicing, and realizing enlightening teachings, and she had attained clarity and serenity through the teachings. Her intentions were pure and good, and she was dedicated to the welfare of others. She was aiming for the vision of Buddha and was seeking omniscient knowledge. She stood near the king's throne in an attitude of respect, but she did not take anything from among the goods the king was distributing. Just standing there, she thought, I have gained a true boon in getting to see such a spiritual friend as this. Thinking of the king as a spiritual friend, a sympathizer, a protector, and an enlightened one, with a mind free from deceit or guile, flooded with supreme joy and happiness, she took off her jewelry and tossed it before the king, so that it lay on the ground between the railings around the throne. Having scattered her jewelry, she made these vows, just as the king encompassing sound of the proclamation of all laws is a refuge for leaderless people in the dark, so may I also become one such in the future. The reality he knows, may I also know. By the means through which he attains emancipation, may I also be emancipated. The path he practices, may I also practice. Just as he is fair to behold, has endless wealth and assistance, and is invulnerable and invincible, may I also become like this. Wherever he is born, may I also be born. Perceiving her involved in such thoughts, the king looked at her and said, Take what you need. I am giving away all I have to satisfy everyone. Made this offer by the king, she gained even more faith. With a serene mind, energized by lofty, far-reaching virtue, she spoke these verses to the king. Before you were here in this city, great king, it was joyless, lifeless, horrible as the realm of ghosts. People were murderous, thieving, unrestrained, deceitful, harsh, and foul in speech. They were covetous, malicious, and opinionated. By their wrongdoing they fell into states of woe. Because of the ills of the views of these unjust, ignorant people, for many years there was no rain. Because of drought the seeds died, crops and trees did not grow, lakes and streams dried up, plants and forests withered. The rivers all went dry, the parks were like deserts. Before you appeared, clear-eyed, the earth was strewn with bleached bones. Now you have joined with the needy, and all are satisfied coming forth. You shower gifts on the four quarters, fulfilling all, low and high. There are no more thieves, mercenaries, or frauds. No one is killed or injured. None go hopelessly to death. The world is leaderless no more. People who like to kill used to drink the blood of their victims. Those who used to eat each other's flesh have become kindly due to your charities. People used to wear rags and leaves, and were hungry and homeless. With you here, the grains grow by themselves and the trees give forth their bounty. Wise women and men appear too, now that you have been born, leader of the world. Those who were formerly all on wrong paths are now well adorned and dressed, sporting like gods in paradise. Men were wrongly obsessed with desires, delighting in unruly passion, given to raping women and girls in their own care and the care of others. Now, though others' wives be like goddesses, well-dressed, adorned, and perfumed, When men see them they are satisfied with their own wives, as in the heaven of content. People used to be deceitful, cruel, coarse, and dishonest in speech. Having given this up, now they act justly, freed from wrong views. No music or celestial song, nor even the voice of Brahma or the singing of birds can match your voice, O leader. Above you stands a jewel parasol with webs of gold, on a jewel cane, radiant, with nets of jewelry all around. The notes of its bells surpass all sounds in the world, like the tones of Buddha's voice, they intone the tranquil sound of truth. Those in all lands who hear this put an end to afflictions, hearing the names of the Buddhas over the ages and the oceans of the wise. By your power the bells bespeak the successive lands since the past, the names of the lands, and the cycles of true teaching everywhere. The sound of the bells, liquid, free-flowing, rings throughout the continent, telling of the manners of action of the gods and the lords of the worlds. Hearing the bells tell of the accumulations of their deeds, gods and people give up evil, practice good, and rely on the enlightenment of the Buddhas. Your father was Starlight, the king, your mother Queen Lotus Light. You were born in a corrupt age and acquired the rulership. There was a large park, arrayed with flowers and precious lamps, adorned with 500 lotus ponds, and surrounded with hundreds of trees. On the bank of each pond was a villa, with 1,000 pillars, resplendent with 1,000 balustrades, with radiant nets and crescents all around. When it had not rained for years, with lawlessness prevailing everywhere, the water in the ponds evaporated and the trees withered. 7 nights before your birth there were innumerable wonders, convincing all who saw them that a Savior was surely to be born. In the middle of the night the earth quaked, and a light like the sun appeared in the pond called Impeccable. Thereupon the 500 ponds were filled with pure water, the trees flourished, and flowers and fruits were filled with life. The ponds, filled with water, refreshed the whole grove. By the streams flowing from them the whole continent was replenished with moisture. The herbs, crops, and greenery growing, the trees flowered and fruited. All the seeds in the earth sprouted, moistened by the water. Every place on earth was equally watered then, and all places low and high became level. Ravines and rugged terrain then became instantly level. Brambles, gravel, and the like disappeared, replaced by beautiful jewels. All the people exulted, like the thirsty drinking water, and celebrated this park, saying, "By whose power is this felicity?" Then the King Starlight, with his wife, son, and ministers, surrounded by millions of people, went to enjoy the park. In the middle was the pond Impeccable, filled with fragrant water. There the king stood, up in its villa, a temple of truth. It had been 7 nights since the water had appeared. Again the whole earth trembled, with all its mountains and abodes. In the middle of the pond 1,000 petaled lotus appeared, shining like 1,000 suns, suffusing the peak of the polar mountain with light. Its stem was diamond, its calyx the essence of beauty, its clean broad leaves diamond, its pericarp of finest gold, its filaments radiant, with superb fragrance. On that pericarp the guide was born, sitting up straight, cross-legged. You shone, your body resplendent with the marks of greatness, attended by celestial beings. Descending from the temple, the king took you in his arms, delighted, and handed you to the queen, saying, "This is your son, be of good cheer." Millions of hidden treasuries appeared, the trees of plenty released their goods, and the air was filled with music as you were born, leader of the world. All those living on the continent looked up to you, trusting respectfully they said, "This is the leader of the leaderless." The light emanating from your body illumined the whole earth. Dispelling the darkness of the world, it put an end to all ailments. All malevolent creatures, the venomous and harmful, became inactive then. Frustration, censure, ill fame, pain, misfortunes, illness, accidents, these all ended, fortune came, and everyone became joyful. Everyone loved one another, and all became kind. Free from animosity, non-violent, they set out on the path of knowledge. The righteous king shut off the evil ways, opened the way to heaven, and showed the way to omniscience. You have done a great service to the world. We benefit further from seeing you, oceanic giver. After long absence, a leader of the helpless is born in the world. You are a rare guide. Having thus eulogized the king, the girl Jewelite then paid her respects to him and stood there reverently. Looking at her, the king said, "Rare are those who appreciate the virtues of others. For the ignorant, the ungrateful, the undiscerning, the agitated, the disturbed, the muddled thinkers, the deranged, the backsliders, those who do not realize the excellence of others' virtues, it is impossible to comprehend or even conceive of the virtues of the enlightened, or to realize the excellence of knowledge of all virtues. Without a doubt you have set out for enlightenment, since you have understood such virtues of enlightening beings. Our efforts for the care of beings have not been fruitless, as you, endowed with such knowledge, have appeared in our kingdom, by virtue of the higher knowledge of superior people." Then with his own hand the king gave her a priceless robe, radiant with sparkling jewels, and also gave a precious robe to each of her companions. He said, "Take this and put it on." Jewelite then knelt on the ground, picked up the robe in both hands, lifted it to her head, and put it on. Her companions likewise each put on their robes. Having put on the robes, the girl and her companions circled the king in respect, with the reflections of all the stars glittering in their robes. Seeing this, the people said, "You are beautiful, young lady, with your companions, adorned with stars like a night goddess. Surrounded by them, you sparkle most brightly." Then the night goddess Sarvavrikshaprafalana Sukhyasamvasa said to Sadhana, "You should realize that it was none other than the Buddhāvataṃsaka, who at that time was the king encompassing sound of the proclamation of all laws, and the Queen Lotus Light, wife of the King Starlight and mother of the king encompassing sound of the proclamation of all laws, was none other than Queen Maya. Maya was the Queen Lotus Light at that time, by whom the spontaneously born child was carried at the hip. And the King Father, the elder King Starlight, was none other than King Shuddhodana. And you may think the girl Jewelite of that time was someone else, but you should realize that she was none other than I. I myself was that girl Jewelite in that time. As for the people of that time who were taken care of by the king, encompassing sound of the proclamation of all laws by means of generosity, kindness, charitable works, and sympathy, you might think they were other people, but you should not see it that way. They are now the enlightening beings gathered here in the audience of the Buddha, standing on the ground of enlightening beings, irreversibly determined to reach supreme perfect enlightenment, some in the first stage, some in the second, some in the third, some in the fourth, some in the fifth, some in the sixth, some in the seventh, some in the eighth, some in the ninth, some in the 10th stage, who have attained by various different vows, various approaches to omniscience, various preparations, various accomplishments, various ways of emancipation, various purifications of manifestations of the path, various mystic powers, and various manifestations of the path, and, by various states of liberation, abide in various spiritual abodes in this assembly. Then the night goddess spoke these verses to Sadhana, further revealing the enlightening liberation of manifestation of satisfaction by treasure produced from great joy. Broad is my vision, with which I observe everywhere, vast oceans of lands of many kings, and oceans of beings in a whirl. In all lands Buddhas sit at enlightenment trees, dispassionate, pervading everywhere by mystic powers and always teaching and guiding beings. My hearing is perfectly clear, and I hear all sounds thereby. I hear all the teachings of the Buddhas and am extremely joyful. My knowledge, non-dualistic, unhindered, penetrates the spheres of others' minds. The vast ocean of minds of the world I comprehend in an instant. I remember the past by the power of recollection and concentration, know oceans of eons, the many hundreds of oceans of lives of myself and others. I know in an instant as many eons as atoms in an ocean of lands, the beings transmigrating, the Buddhas and their projections. I also remember the initial vow of the Buddhas and those who attained, having accomplished their practice, by many means appropriate to their undertaking. The attainments to the stage of coronation of the oceans of lofty virtue, and their many ways of awakening, I comprehend in an instant. I know the methods by which they taught in the world, their measureless virtues in nirvana, and how long their teachings remained. The pure principles of their myriad vehicles and extensive guidance of beings shown in the world, I know in particular, in countless various ways. This way of liberation, witnessing the wealth of satisfaction produced from the treasury of joy, I have cultivated over many hundreds of eons, and you too should enter this way. I know only this enlightening liberation of manifestation of satisfaction by treasure produced from great joy. How can I know the practice or tell of the virtues of the enlightening beings in the presence of all Buddhas who have plunged into the ocean of commitment to omniscience, who have fulfilled the vow to accomplish the myriad past vows of all Buddhas who have the mighty knowledge to enter all stages of enlightening upon entering one stage of enlightening, who have purified the practice of the vow to comprehend all practices of enlightening beings in one practice, who are masters of the state of comprehension of the whole ocean of all enlightening liberations in each enlightening liberation? In this same enlightenment site there is a night goddess named Sarvajagadraksha Pranidhana Viryaprabha, in the presence of the Buddha. Go ask her how an enlightening being is to develop sentient beings to supreme perfect enlightenment, purify all Buddha lands, serve all Buddhas and practice all Buddha's teachings. Then Sudhana paid his respects to the night goddess Sarvavriksha Prafulana Sukha Samvasa and went on. Continue to video 28.